slow down for a moment. Breathe before you keep reading. Stay here with me just for a little while. You do not have to rush past this feeling. You do not have to pretend you're fine while something quiet inside you is asking to be understood. I know you have learned how to keep moving even when your heart feels tired. I know you have learned how to smile with a weight behind your silence. But right now, you do not have to perform strength for me. You can let your shoulders drop. You can let the room become quiet. You can let yourself be seen without needing to explain every scar. I bought a gift for someone I have not met yet, and maybe that sounds strange until you understand what it really means. It was never about the gift itself. It was never about the wrapping or the ribbon or the small, beautiful thing held inside. It was about the space it represented. It was about making room before you arrived. It was about believing that somewhere there was a woman who had spent so much of her life being expected to understand everyone else, while almost no one stopped long enough to understand her. Stay with me here. Sometimes the deepest love does not begin with touch. Sometimes it begins with preparation. Sometimes it begins with a quiet place being saved for a heart that has been tired of arriving where it was never fully welcomed. And maybe that is the wound, isn't it? Not that you were never loved at all, but that so often you had to wonder whether you were being loved carefully. You gave pieces of yourself with both hands. You remembered details. You stayed when others were difficult. You softened your voice when people were hurting. You carried conversations, carried moods, carried responsibilities, carried disappointment, and still found a way to be kind. But when your own hands trembled, when your own heart needed gentleness, there were moments when the room felt empty. The chair beside you stayed empty. The phone stayed silent. The kitchen light hummed late at night while you stood there wondering why being strong felt so lonely. There is something I need you to hear. You were not hard to love just because someone failed to love you well. You were not too much just because your heart felt deeply. You were not asking for too much when you wanted consistency, tenderness, presence, and truth. Maybe nobody told you this gently enough, but needing to be chosen without begging does not make you needy. Wanting someone to notice when your silence changes does not make you dramatic. Hoping that love would feel safe after all you have survived does not make you unrealistic. It makes you human. It makes you someone whose heart kept believing, even after disappointment tried to make belief feel foolish. I imagine the mirror has seen more of you than most people have. Not the version you show the world, but the quiet one. The one who looks at herself after crying and asks, "Why am I still carrying this?" The one who wipes her face, fixes her voice, and walks back into life like nothing happened. The mirror knows the pauses. It knows the moments when you searched your own reflection for proof that you were still there beneath the exhaustion. Do you ever wonder why you still ache, even after you told yourself you were over it? Maybe it is because your heart was never only trying to forget someone. Maybe it was trying to recover the part of you that felt unseen while loving them. Look at me when I say this. The woman in that mirror is not broken. She is tired. She is not unlovable. She is underheld. She is not too late. She has simply been waiting for a kind of love that does not make her audition for peace. And the gift, the one bought before meeting you, belongs to that woman too. Not because she needs proof from a man to know her worth, but because she deserves to receive something that does not come with pressure, confusion, or fear. She deserves a tenderness that does not ask her to shrink first. She deserves a love that arrives softly enough for her nervous heart to believe it is not being tricked again. What if the gift was never about being surprised by love, but about finally being seen before you had to ask? What if it was a quiet way of saying, I knew someone like you existed. I knew somewhere there was a woman who kept giving even when she was empty. I knew she might not trust beautiful words anymore, so I wanted my presence to speak before my promises did. Breathe before you answer. Have you ever felt too much and yet not enough, too emotional for the careless, but not chosen enough by the people you made room for? That kind of ache can make a woman question her own softness. It can make her hide the most beautiful parts of herself just to survive being misunderstood. But this is where the healing begins, not with you forcing yourself to believe in love again, not with you rushing into hope before your heart feels ready. It begins here in this quiet moment with the truth that you do not have to earn a place in someone's heart by abandoning your own. You do not have to become easier, smaller, colder, quieter, or less alive to be loved well. The right kind of love will not punish you for having depth. It will not make your sensitivity feel like a burden. It will meet you with patience. It will understand that behind your guardedness is not arrogance, but a heart that once opened too widely and was not protected. So let the mirror become softer tonight. Let it stop being a place where you judge what life has done to you. Let it become a place where you remember what survived. The tenderness in you survived. The hope in you survived. The part of you that still wants to believe in a peaceful love survived. And I know you may not be ready to trust that yet. That is okay. You do not have to be strong in this moment. You do not even have to believe me completely. Just let the possibility sit beside you like a morning light after a long night of crying. You are not forgotten. You are not too late. You are not hard to love. And maybe somewhere, before you even arrive, there is already a place prepared gently enough for your heart to rest. Maybe the reason this touches something so deep in you is because you know what it feels like to be remembered only after you have already given everything. You know what it feels like to be needed, but not always cherished. To be useful, but not always held. To be the one people come to when their world was falling apart, while your own quiet storms are treated like background noise. And I know you may have told yourself that this is just who you are, that you are the strong one, the understanding one, the one who can handle more than most. But listen closely because this part matters. Sometimes what people call your strength was really your heart learning how to survive without enough tenderness. You became good at carrying things. Too good. You learned how to hear the change in someone's voice before they admitted they were hurting. You learned how to sense distance before anyone said goodbye. You learned how to love in details, in small gestures, in remembering what someone said weeks ago, in showing up when it would have been easier to disappear. But somewhere along the way, you may have started believing that love meant being endlessly patient with people who were not careful with you. You may have confused loyalties with self-abandonment. You may have mistaken your ability to endure pain for proof that the pain was acceptable. Stay with me here. I am not saying this to make you regret the love you gave. I would never ask you to be ashamed of your softness. Your heart has always been one of the most sacred things about you. But I want you to see the difference between loving deeply and bleeding quietly. There were times you stayed calm when your heart was shaking. Times you said, "It's okay," when it was not okay. Times you made excuses for someone's absence because accepting the truth would have hurt too much. And in the dim hallway of your own thoughts, you kept asking the question you were afraid to say out loud. Why do I keep giving so much and still feel so alone? That question does not make you weak. It means something inside you was still honest enough to recognize imbalance. It means the part of you that wanted real love never fully disappeared, even when you tried to silence it. Even when you told yourself not to expect too much. Even when disappointment made you lower your standards just so the ache would feel less sharp. But the soul knows when it is being underfed. The heart knows when it is being asked to survive on crumbs and call them a feast. And maybe for a long time, you did not need someone to give you everything. You needed someone to notice that you were tired of being the only one trying. There's something I need you to hear about the gift. It was never meant to impress you. It was not bought to convince you that love is safe before your heart is ready to believe it. It was bought as a quiet answer to a wound you should never have had to carry. The wound of feeling like an afterthought, the wound of being chosen when convenient, but not protected when it mattered. The wound of wondering if anyone could love the woman behind the strength, not just the version of you that keeps functioning. Maybe nobody told you this gently enough, but you deserve to be loved before you collapse. You deserve to be seen before you disappear into silence. I think about you standing in that kitchen silence, not because anything dramatic happened there, but because sometimes the deepest pain happens in ordinary rooms. A cup left untouched, a light above the sink, soft rain against the window, your mind going back to old words, old promises, old moments when you thought maybe this time would be different. And there you were, trying to make peace with the fact that your heart still remembered what your mind was trying to release. Do you ever wonder why some memories stay like fading perfume in a room long after the person is gone? Maybe it is because you were not only grieving who left. Maybe you were grieving who you had to become while waiting for them to stay. Look at me when I say this. You did not become guarded because you stopped believing in love. You became guarded because something in you still believes love should not hurt like that. That is not bitterness. That is wisdom trying to protect your softness. That is your heart standing at the door saying, not everyone gets to enter the same way again. And I respect that. I would never ask you to throw open every locked place inside you just because someone speaks kindly. Healing does not mean you stop being careful. Healing means you stop confusing carefulness with being unworthy. You can have boundaries and still be tender. You can be cautious and still be capable of deep love. What if you were never difficult to love? What if the people who made you feel difficult were simply not equipped to hold the kind of heart you carry? A deep heart can feel heavy to someone who only knows shallow water. A loyal heart can feel intimidating to someone who runs from responsibility. A woman who feels everything honestly can seem like too much to someone who has never learned how to sit with truth. But that does not make her wrong. It makes her rare. It makes her someone who should not have to beg to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding her. And maybe this is why the mirror matters. Because for too long, you may have looked into it through the eyes of people who failed you. You may have seen yourself as the one who loved too hard, cared too much, stayed too long, hoped too deeply. But I see something else. I see someone who kept her heart alive in places where it would have been easier to become cold. I see someone who continued to offer kindness even after life gave her reasons to shut down. I see someone whose softness is not proof of weakness, but proof that survival did not steal her soul. So no, the gift is not here to rush you. It is not here to ask for trust before trust is rebuilt. It is simply sitting quietly in the room of this confession like an empty chair, waiting without pressure. It says, there is space for you here, not the polished you, not the pretending you, not the version who says she is fine because she does not want to be a burden. The real you, the tired you, the woman who still aches sometimes and does not know why. The woman who wants to be chosen, but is afraid of what choosing might cost her again. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to heal slowly. You are allowed to admit that some parts of you still flinch when love comes too close. And still, none of that makes you less worthy of a peaceful future. It only means your heart is asking for tenderness with patience. And I want you to know this before we go any further. The love meant for you will not make you feel ashamed of needing gentleness. It will not stand outside your healing, demanding proof. It will sit near you softly with steady hands and remind you that you do not have to earn rest. You only have to let yourself believe little by little that you were worthy of it all along. There is a kind of tiredness that does not come from doing too much, but from feeling too much without a safe place to put it. And I think you know that kind of tiredness. The one that follows you into the quiet bed at night, even when the day is finally over. The one that sits beside you like an invisible weight while the room is dark and everyone else seems far away, far away. You lie there with your thoughts moving softly through old places, through things you forgave before you were ready, through words you swallowed because you were afraid they would make you seem difficult. And somewhere in that silence, your heart whispers the thing you try not to admit. I am tired of being strong without being held. You may have learned to hide the most tender parts of yourself because every time you revealed them, someone either misunderstood them or used them carelessly. So you became careful with your needs, careful with your hope, careful with your softness. Well, you learned how to laugh without letting people hear the ache underneath. You learned how to say less when you wanted to say, please notice me. You learned how to stand in front of the mirror and become your own witness because sometimes no one else stayed long enough to ask the right questions. Stay with me here. The wound is not only that someone left. Sometimes the deeper wound is that you had to keep living like you were not affected. And I know there were moments when you wondered if maybe you were the problem. Maybe you cared too deeply. Maybe you expected too much. Maybe your heart was too sensitive for this world. Maybe the love you wanted was too gentle, too honest, too consistent to be real. But there is something I need you to hear. The fact that you desired softness does not mean you were weak. The fact that you wanted reassurance does not mean you were insecure. The fact that inconsistency hurt you does not mean you were dramatic. It means your heart was built to recognize safety, and every time love came dressed as confusion, something inside you knew it was not home. I bought the gift before meeting you because I imagined a woman who had spent years receiving apologies instead of changed behavior. A woman who had heard beautiful words that did not become shelter. A woman who had been promised presence but handed absence. And I thought, if she ever arrives, I do not want to meet her with noise. I do not want to rush her guarded heart. I do not want to make her feel like she has to become easy to earn tenderness. I want something quiet waiting. Something that says, you were thought of before you entered the room. Something that tells the woman in the mirror that she does not have to prove she deserves gentleness. Maybe nobody told you this gently enough, but the love you gave still counts, even if it was not returned the way it should have been. It was not wasted just because someone failed to honor it. It came from a real place in you. It came from the part of you that still believed care could heal, patience could matter, and loyalty could build something sacred. But loving someone deeply should not require you to disappear. It should not cost you your voice, your peace, your sleep, your sense of self. Love is not meant to make a woman stand in morning light after crying, trying to convince herself that being hurt is normal because at least someone's stayed a little. Look at me when I say this. You do not have to keep protecting people from the truth of how they made you feel. You do not have to carry old pain politely just because you are afraid your honesty will disturb the peace. Sometimes the peace you are protecting is not peace at all. It is silence. And silence can become a room where your heart slowly forgets how to breathe. Have you ever felt that? We're surrounded by people, conversations, responsibilities, messages, noise, and still there was one part of you waiting for someone to turn around and say, I know you are not okay. That part of you deserves compassion, not judgment, not shame, not another command to move on faster. She deserves someone to sit beside her without trying to fix her too quickly. She deserves to be told, of course you are tired, of course it hurt, of course you needed more. And maybe that is what healing begins to sound like. Not a loud declaration, not a dramatic ending. Just a soft truth finally spoken without fear. You were not asking for too much. You were asking the wrong people to understand the value of what they were holding, the peso. And when someone does not know how to hold something sacred, they may call it heavy instead of admitting they were careless. The mirror has watched you try to forgive yourself for things that were not your fault. It has seen you question why you stayed, why you hoped, why you gave another chance, why you could not become cold as easily as others seem to. But what if your softness was never the mistake? What if the mistake was believing that someone else's inability to honor it meant you should hide it? Your heart did not fail you. It warned you. It endured. It waited. It broke quietly and still found ways to love the world. That is not weakness. That is a kind of beauty many people do not even know how to recognize. So tonight, I do not want you to force yourself into hope. I want you to let yourself surrender the blame you have been carrying. Just a little. Let the old story loosen its grip. Let the belief that you were too much begin to fall away. Let the woman in the mirror stop apologizing for wanting to be chosen with tenderness. You can be guarded and still be worthy. You can be healing and still be lovable. You can be afraid and still be moving toward peace. And maybe the gift is only a small symbol, but its message is quiet and steady. Before you arrive, before you explain, before you prove anything, there is already room for the real you. Sometimes the breakthrough does not feel like a door opening. Sometimes it feels like finally admitting that the room you kept trying to warm was never built to hold your heart. And I know that can hurt in a way that has no clean language, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You start remembering all the moments when you made yourself smaller just to keep love close. The times you softened your disappointment because you did not want to start another conversation that ended with you feeling misunderstood. The times you stared into the mirror and rehearsed being okay before facing the world again. And maybe quietly, you began to wonder whether peace would always require pretending. But listen closely, because this part matters. Peace does not ask you to abandon yourself. Real love does not require you to betray your own nervous heart. The kind of love meant for you will not make you earn calm by truths. It will not ask you to become silent so someone else can remain comfortable. It will not make your needs feel like interruptions. And if you have spent years being praised for how much you can endure, I want you to hear the gentler truth beneath all of that. Endurance is not the same as belonging. Just because you survived something does not mean you were meant to keep living inside it. There may be a part of you that still grieves the version of love you hoped would happen. Not because you are stuck, but because hope leaves an imprint. You remember what you imagined, the soft mornings, the honest conversations, the feeling of being chosen without confusion, the empty chair finally filled by someone who wanted to stay, not someone you had to convince. And when that did not become real, maybe you did not only lose a person. Maybe you lost a future you had quietly built in your mind. Do you ever wonder why letting go can feel like losing a place you never fully lived in? That is because your heart had already moved furniture into a dream. Stay with me here. I am not here to shame that dream. I am not here to tell you that you should have known better. You loved from the place in you that still believed beauty was possible. That is not foolish. That is human. That is brave in a world that often teaches people to protect themselves by feeling less. You were not wrong for wanting a love that felt like shelter. You were not wrong for believing someone's words before their actions taught you the truth. You were not wrong for hoping. But now, healing asks you to stop using your own hope as evidence against yourself. Hope was not the wound. The wound was being left alone with it. Maybe nobody told you this gently enough, but some disappointments are not punishments. Sometimes they are painful redirections back to yourself. Not because you deserve to suffer, but because your heart was being invited to stop begging closed doors to become home. I know that sounds simple until you are the one standing in the hallway with trembling hands, still holding all the love you prepared. But what if the love you prepared was not wasted? What if it was teaching you what your heart is capable of, while also teaching you what it must no longer tolerate? What if the gift bought before meeting you was not just a symbol of future love, but a reminder that preparation can be sacred when it begins with self-respect? Look at me when I say this. Your pain did not make you less worthy. It made you more aware of what your soul cannot survive again. That awareness is not bitterness. It is wisdom with tears still drying on its face. It is the morning light after crying, entering slow, slowly through the window, touching the parts of the room that looked impossible in the dark. You are allowed to learn from what hurt you without becoming hard. You are allowed to close doors without becoming cruel. You are allowed to say, I love deeply, but I will not lose myself like that again. That sentence is not revenge, it is recovery. And maybe this is where the mirror changes. For so long, it reflected back a woman who was trying to understand why she was not enough for people who kept taking from her tenderness. But now, I want you to stand before it differently. Not asking, why wasn't I chosen? But whispering, why did I ever believe being unchosen by the wrong person meant I was not worthy of being chosen at all? Feel the difference. One question keeps you trapped inside their absence. The other begins to bring you home to yourself. One makes their failure the measure of your value. The other returns your value to your own hands. There is something I need you to hear. The love that is coming after healing will not look like the love that made you abandon yourself. It will not need to be chased through silence. It will not live only in intense moments and disappear when steadiness is required. It will not make you question whether you are asking for too much when all you want is honesty. Future love, the kind that can actually meet you, will feel quieter than chaos. It may not arrive with thunder. It may arrive like soft rain, steady, patient, gentle enough that your guarded heart does not feel forced to open, but safe enough that it slowly wants to. So let this be the place where you stop calling your sensitivity a problem. Let this be where you stop apologizing for needing consistency. Be where in the mirror begins to understand that she was not difficult to love. She was simply asking to be loved in a way that matched the depth of what she was giving. And that is not too much. That is not unrealistic. That is not weakness. That is the sacred standard of a heart that has finally remembered its worth. The gift is still there, wrapped in silence, waiting without demand. But now, it means something deeper. It is not saying someone will come and complete you.
No.
You were never incomplete. It is saying, when love comes again, may it meet a woman who no longer forgets herself just to be held. May it meet you softer, wiser, calmer. May it meet you with your dignity intact. May it meet you after you have stopped mistaking longing for destiny and pain for proof. And until then, I want you to rest in this truth. You are not behind. You are not ruined. You are not too late for peace. You are only learning how to receive a love that does not require you to disappear. There is a softer version of you waiting beneath all the survival. Not a weaker version, not a smaller version. A truer one. The one who does not have to brace herself before every conversation. The one who does not read silence like danger. The one who does not mistake distance for proof that she has done something wrong. I know it may feel far away. Sometimes, like a room in your own heart you have not entered in years. But she is still there. She has always been there, quietly breathing beneath the pressure. Quietly, waiting for the moment you would stop calling your exhaustion maturity and begin calling it what it really was. A sign that you were carrying too much alone. Maybe you forgot how gentle you were before life taught you to prepare for disappointment. Maybe you forgot the sound of your own hope before it became careful. Maybe somewhere between being strong for everyone else and pretending not to need anything, you started living like your softness had to be hidden to be safe. But stay with me here. Your softness was never the reason you got hurt. The wrong hands were. The wrong rooms were. The wrong people who wanted warmth from you but did not know how to protect the fire were. You do not have to become cold just because someone was careless with what was sacred. I want you to imagine the mirror again, but not as a place of questioning this time. Not as a place where you search for what went wrong. Imagine it as a quiet witness to your return. The room is still. Maybe there is soft rain outside. Maybe the kitchen light is still glowing somewhere behind you. Maybe the world has not changed all at once, but something in the way you look at yourself begins to shift. You are not standing there asking to be approved. You are not waiting for the memory of someone else to decide whether you are enough. You are simply there, breathing, realizing that the woman looking back at you has survived every night she thought would break her. There is something I need you to hear. You do not have to hate the past to be free from it. You do not have to turn every memory into anger just to prove you have moved on. Some memories can be touched gently and still released. Some old songs can hurt for a while and then become only songs again. Some fading perfume can disappear from the room without you forcing the window open. Healing does not always arrive like a dramatic goodbye. Sometimes healing is quieter. It is the first morning you wake up and do not check for what is missing. It is the first time you choose peace without feeling guilty. It is the first time you realize you can miss what you wanted and still not return to what wounded you. And this is where your worth begins to feel less like a sentence someone else must speak over you, and more like a truth you carry inside your own hands. You begin to understand that you were valuable before anyone noticed. You were lovable before anyone chose you. You were meaningful before anyone understood the depth of your heart. What if you were never waiting to become worthy? What if you were only waiting to stop seeing yourself through the eyes of people who could not love you completely? Breathe before you answer, because that question can open something tender. It can make you grieve all the years you spent trying to become easier for people who were never prepared to meet you deeply fully. Look at me when I say this. You are allowed to become soft again, but this time with wisdom. You are allowed to love again, but this time without abandoning the woman you worked so hard to rebuild. You are allowed to hope again, but this time without handing someone the power to define your value.
The next version of you does not need to be guarded against everything.
She only needs to be loyal to herself, loyal to her peace, loyal to her body when it feels unsettled, loyal to her voice when it wants to speak, loyal to the quiet truth inside her that knows the difference between love and longing, between patience and self-betrayal, between someone who wants her presence and someone who only wants her comfort. Maybe nobody told you this gently enough, but being chosen by yourself first is not loneliness. It is the beginning of peace. It is the empty chair no longer feeling like rejection. It is the quiet bed no longer feeling like punishment. It is the silence becoming less like absence and more like rest. And when you learn to sit with yourself without feeling unwanted, something sacred begins to heal. You stop rushing toward anyone who offers warmth. You stop confusing attention with devotion. You stop calling crumbs love just because your heart has been hungry. You begin to understand that the gift you were waiting for was not only in someone else's hands. Part of it was already inside you, waiting to be opened. I bought a gift for someone I have not met yet because I believe in the woman who arrives after survival. Not the perfect woman. Not the untouched woman. Not the woman who has never cried in the dark or questioned her own worth in front of a mirror. I mean the real woman. The woman with memories. The woman with depth. The woman who has loved, lost, endured, softened, guarded, and still somehow carries a quiet light within her. I believe in the woman who is learning that she does not have to explain her pain to deserve tenderness. I believe in the woman who is no longer willing to disappear just to be loved. But this is where the healing begins to become yours, not mine, not someone else's, yours. You begin to take back the parts of yourself you left in rooms where you were misunderstood, but you take back the tenderness that was made to feel like a burden. You take back the hope that was embarrassed by disappointment. You take back the voice that learned to whisper when it wanted to be held. And slowly, without forcing anything, you begin to feel it. You are still here. You are still whole. You are still capable of receiving something peaceful. So when love comes closer one day, you will not meet it as a woman begging to be saved. You will meet it as a woman who has already begun coming home to herself. You will know that romance is not meant to rescue you from your reflection. It is meant to stand beside you while you already know who you are. And if the gift is placed in your hands, you will not receive it as proof that you are finally enough. You will receive it as a reflection of what was always true. You were worthy before it arrived. You were worthy before he arrived. You were worthy before anyone had the wisdom to see you clearly. And tonight, even if you only believe that a little, let it be enough. And maybe now, after all this quiet remembering, you can feel something inside you beginning to unclench. Not all at once, not dramatically. Just enough for your breath to move differently. Just enough for the room to feel less like a place where you are waiting to be forgotten and more like a place where your heart is slowly returning to itself. There is a kind of peace that does not arrive with answers. It arrives when you stop fighting the truth of what you needed. It arrives when you stop apologizing for having a heart that wanted to be handled with care. It arrives when the woman in the mirror is no longer treated like someone who failed at love, but someone who survived the places where love was not mature enough to meet her. Stay with me here, because the love that is meant to find you after this will not be asked to heal what only you can reclaim. It will not become your reason to exist. It will not be a rescue boat for a soul that was never drowning beyond repair. It will be something softer than rescue, something steadier than excitement, something honest enough to sit beside your healing without rushing it. And when it comes, it will not feel like the old chaos wearing a new face. It will not make you question every silence. It will not turn affection into a puzzle. It will not ask you to lose your dignity for closeness. It will feel like a hand held out gently, not pulling you away from yourself, but walking beside the self you finally came back to. Maybe that is why I bought the gift before meeting you. Not because I knew your name, not because I knew the sound of your voice, but because somewhere deep in me, and I believed there was a woman who deserved to arrive somewhere and not feel late. A woman who deserved to be received without being tested. A woman who had spent too long wondering if she would ever be someone's first thought instead of their last option. And I wanted the gift to say what words sometimes fail to say. You were not an afterthought. You were not a maybe. You were not someone to be chosen only after every easier thing disappeared. You're worth preparing for. There is something I need you to hear. Love does not become real because it is loud. Love becomes real when it is safe, when it remembers, when it listens, when it does not punish you for being tender, when it does not disappear every time your heart needs reassurance, when it can look at the tired places in you without making you feel embarrassed for having them. Maybe nobody told you this gently enough, but the right love will not make you feel childish for needing consistency. It will not mock the parts of you that still ache. It will not stand in front of the mirror with you and ask why you are not already healed. It will simply be there quietly while you learn to see yourself with kinder eyes. And fun, when that day comes, I hope you do not shrink from it just because it feels unfamiliar. I hope you remember that peace may feel strange or if you have spent years surviving uncertainty. I hope you do not mistake calm for emptiness. I hope you do not run from gentleness because it does not carry the intensity of old wounds. Sometimes love after healing feels almost too quiet in the beginning. No storm, no begging, no guessing. Just presence, just honesty. Just someone who does not need you to earn tenderness by proving how much pain you can tolerate. Look at me when I say this. You are allowed to be loved without fear being the price. You are allowed to receive without preparing for loss. You are allowed to let someone be kind to you without immediately wondering when the kindness will change. You are allowed to be held by words, by patience, by steady actions, by a love that does not make your nervous heart feel unsafe. And even if trust comes slowly, even if your hands tremble a little when something beautiful is offered, that does not make you broken. It means you are learning how to accept warmth after standing too long in the cold. The mirror will still be there, but now maybe it will not feel like a place of questioning. Maybe it will become a place of recognition, a quiet witness to the woman who stopped abandoning herself, the woman who no longer measures her worth by who stayed, who left, who noticed, who forgot. The woman who can look at her own reflection and whisper, I am still here and I am still worthy of softness. And maybe that whisper will not sound powerful at first. Maybe it will sound fragile. But even fragile truth is still truth. Even a small light changes the shape of a dark room. So if the gift ever reaches your hands, I hope you understand what it means. It is not proof that you finally became lovable. You were lovable before anyone had the courage to love you correctly. It is not payment for your pain. Your pain was never something you had to earn compensation for. It is not a promise that life will never hurt again. It is a reminder that tenderness can still find you without asking you to become someone else. It is a symbol of a place already made ready for the woman who thought she might have to arrive perfectly to be welcomed. And I want you to rest with this tonight. You do not have to chase the love that is meant for you. You do not have to rehearse being enough. You do not have to convince the right heart to recognize yours. Healing has been bringing you home slowly, breath by breath, tear by tear, mirror by mirror. And when love meets you there, it will not complete you. It will honor what you have already rebuilt. It will sit beside you in the quiet, like morning light after crying, and remind you without pressure that you are safe now. Not because someone saved you, but because you finally stopped believing you were hard to love. You were never hard to love. You were only waiting for a love gentle enough to see you without making you disappear.